Have you ever seen an error in production and had no idea which service caused it? In distributed system, logs are everywhere and failures are never in one place. In this video, I will explain how distributed logs really works in the production and why normal logs are not enough, and how comparing debug and the failure across the dozens of the microservices. So first of all, to dive into this whole topic, we need to understand how distributed logging works, right? So while one user request is coming to our server, then user request touches in multiple services. In this diagram, definitely it looks like a little bit boring, but let's try to understand how these things gonna work in the real life in the production environment. So while our user service is the traveling through multiple services, like one user request is going through the services, then you can see it can be to the user service, then it can be dive into the product service, or maybe internally it's going to call the order service, and vice versa to the go to the payment service as well as. And similar thing you can see in the right hand side also, the similar thing I have represented here. User service requested through the user service, right? And finally it is getting back into internally it's calling the order service to fulfilling the order. While our user request is going through our services, in the distributed log, we need to attach a kind of request ID and a trace ID. And with the help of the request ID and trace ID, then only we can determine this user service is calling in what are the other services internally, right? Then eventually we can find it out okay, so user service try to get some orders, right? But order service is down, or maybe order service data is not available. Then it is not be able to fulfill. So by using that trace ID, we can just crawl through internally all of the services right there. But how we can do this? That is the most important thing, right? So this looks very simple. You need to attach a kind of request ID and a trace ID, and you can push all of the logs from the user service also. And similarly, it's going to happen for our order service also, order-related logs. In our case, we'll be going to use Grafana. So what is Grafana? Maybe some of you already know Grafana, what it is, right? So Grafana is a kind of visualized tool, right? So where we can visualize our log in better way, right? And we can create some kind of alerts, right? So where we can make our observability better. So here is a question. If you're watching this video maybe for the first time, then definitely you might have thinking what is observability? So observability and monitoring is a kind of set of, you can say, post-deployment the things that is each and every software engineers need to know. So writing code is not enough. You need to know out of the box how your software is performing, right? While it comes to the production environment, right? This is not the thing you are deploying something and it's supposed to 100% work. No, there are certain edge cases may occur, right? Maybe a spike of audience or spike of customers in certain days or certain time, or maybe your CPU is exhausted, or maybe your database is not performing well, or maybe some inside your application, some errors are happening, you are not aware about it. So only thing, those errors, those the incidents or any kind of impact, it's directly impact to the users or customers, which is really bad reputation for business. That's why a lot of companies, they're especially hiring some people for reliability or maybe for observability and monitoring, right? This is the same concept we'll be going to learn here. And while it comes to observability, it's a kind of process we need to determine by using some sort of tool, just like Grafana, or maybe some different, maybe you can use the AWS CloudWatch or vice versa or something like that. Those kind of tools, we can determine our service health. And if there are any kind of spikes are happening, then we'll be going to receive some kind of alerts. So we can set some sort of alerts with the help of those tools, right? So now let's go ahead and understand only Grafana is enough to achieve the observability. In short answer, no, right? Grafana only we can just visualize the log, but how we can report those logs to the Grafana? So that's why we'll be going to use some tools, right? All right, so these are the tools we are going to use right here. So you can see we have our service A and service B, and service A and B, it is pushing the logs with the help of our OpenTelemetry collector. And you can see with the help of OpenTelemetry, we are pushing the logs to a Grafana, and all the testing stuff we are pushing to Jaeger. So Jaeger is going to help us out to trace our service calls. So while our user service the call will be going to that particular request will be going to our service, then with the help of trace ID, then we can find it out all of the trace information in Jaeger. And similar things going to happen for our Grafana Loki. With the help of Grafana Loki, you can see user service also pushing the user service log, and order service also pushing the order service logs. And those logs, we can find it out where? We can find it out in Grafana right there, like with the help of Loki. Right. So now, let's try to understand why this OpenTelemetry is needed, because without OpenTelemetry also it can be possible like to push this code, push all the logs directly to Grafana and directly to Jaeger, right? But reality is not that easy, right? So OpenTelemetry, it's not a kind of tool or something which is maybe you can open in your browser, right? So OpenTelemetry is a kind of standard SDK protocol which is called OpenTelemetry protocol, or maybe you can directly say something like this, right? OLTP, right? OpenTelemetry protocol. So with the help of OpenTelemetry protocol, right, our Grafana and Loki, it's going to collect all of the logs in a standard form. So what OpenTelemetry is doing, right? OpenTelemetry is a kind of, you can say, the universal language for observability, right? So this is the protocol what exactly it defines what data to collect, right? And how to format it, how to send it, right? So without OpenTelemetry, you can think of like maybe your service A is pushing some sort of logs to the Grafana or maybe somewhere, and service B is also pushing the logs, but each and every service is maintaining their own different standards, right? Maybe request ID can be there, or maybe trace ID or whatever the things will be there, but additional some attributes also will be there. But OpenTelemetry protocol is defining like your request should supposed to have a kind of request ID, and your logger, all of the information should supposed to go inside a certain object, or maybe you need to define your attributes like that way, so it is going to be easy to find the logs in proper way. So all of the third-party tools and libraries, they can understand, oh, okay, this log is coming from OLTP, all right. See, OpenTelemetry protocol. So the visualization will be like this. So this is the way all the third-party tools can visualize log very efficiently, right? So OpenTelemetry handles three things, right? First of all, the traces, right? And the logs and metrics. So let's try to note it down right here, right? So what are the things our OpenTelemetry handles? So number one will be traces. Traces, all right? Then this is going to be like number one. Maybe you can just keep it like this way. And number two will be logs, right? Then number three, metrics. So what is exactly the traces? Traces is a kind of request flow, right? Request flow. And what is here? Maybe we can just like put a kind of arrow, or maybe I can just like make this a little bit bigger, right? Right, request flow. And what is logs? Logs can be events, right? So what exactly is happening inside your application? That is called logs, right? So let's try to put it here. We can say logs is going to be events inside your app, right? Then what is metrics exactly? So metrics can be anything. Metrics can be, it's a number, right? You can say numbers, right? That can be, it can be happen inside. So number can be anything. Number can be what? Number can be CPU uses, or maybe latency, right? Latency, or maybe we can say the counts, all right? Request counts can be anything, like maybe failure or maybe success or anything. So these are the things exactly OpenTelemetry handles, right? So your application doesn't send these things directly to Grafana, right? So what exactly it's sending through? It's sending through to Loki, right? Or it's sending through Jaeger, right? And this is how exactly the Grafana is collecting all of these things from the Loki, and Jaeger is collecting everything with the help of like maybe Alloy, right? So here one thing we are going to use that is called Alloy also, right? So maybe I'm gonna put it right here. Alloy, right? Let's put it a little bit here. All right, so here we are going to use Alloy also, right? So where Alloy going to be fit here? Let's try to add it here. So maybe I'm gonna remove this two line from here, right? So right after OLTP, right? Here we will be going to sit here in maybe different shape, right? This is called Alloy, right? All right, so now we have a full set of pipeline here. So now we understood what is OpenTelemetry is, right? So OpenTelemetry lives inside your services, as an example, service A and B. and it creates the trace ID, span, and attributes, right? And send the data with the help of OLTP. And what is alloy here? So alloy is a kind of, you can say, collector or agent, right? So which is going to handle the traffic, right? You can say in short, traffic controller, right? So alloy receives the data from our OpenTelemetry from the app, right, with the help of OLTP, and it is processed and filter batch and enrich the data, and it forwards the data to the correct backend. So your application should not supposed to know about what is the Jaeger URL, what is the Grafana Loki URL, right? So you no need to integrate multiple URLs, multiple things right there. So you can directly point to your alloy, then definitely alloy can decide like what data to send to logger, what data send to the tracer, right? So that means like one single point, you can just like, put it right there. So you can think of it, alloy is a kind of post office for observability, right? Then now let's move forward with the Jaeger. So what is Jaeger? Jaeger is a kind of tracing, storage, and trace UI. So where we can store the traces, right? So it is showing the request timeline and span and latency per services, like how much time it took to send the request and the response from the other service, right? So in our earlier diagram, we can see like our user service request to the order service, and order service again send back to the user service. There may be order service calling the other service, or maybe payment or third party. Everything we can just like trace it right here in Jaeger, right? So it's giving a kind of beautiful UI in a different the format. So that is also we are going to explore. Now let's try to understand the Loki. So what is Loki? Loki is a kind of logs backend, right? So where we can store our logs, right? And index by level or maybe service, environment, or levels, right? So this is really very cheap and scalable, right? That's why the Grafana Loki is really popular in the software industry, right? And Grafana Loki that's why it is cheap and scalable. That's why a lot of companies, they like the Grafana Loki, right, to use it. Then let's try to understand the Grafana. I already told you like what Grafana it is. It's a form of UI and dashboard where we can visualize the data, or we can just write the queries for logs, and we can write the queries for Jaeger or Tempo for the traces also we can do, right? And we can correlate the logs and the traces where we can nicely visualize all of these things together, right? So now you have a clear picture how distributed logs are working in production in theory, right? So in our next episode, we'll be going to apply all of these things in hands-on, where we will implement one by one all of these things to achieve our observability. If you want to know more this kind of production-ready the knowledge, then definitely I would like to invite you to come to our channel and subscribe right there, and you will be getting a lot of useful content right there. Thank you. See you right there in the next episode.